Mom came back after 6 years, same clothes, no wrinkles, as if not a single day had passed, but she remembers nothing, and every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., she stands in the hallway, staring at the wall. It happened on a Wednesday. The doorbell rang at 7:42 p.m. We weren't expecting anyone. Dad froze mid-bite at the dinner table, fork still hovering in the air. I looked at him, expecting him to say something. A joke maybe? Or a casual, "I'll get it." But he didn't move. He just stared at the front door like he'd seen a ghost. My little brother Jamie whispered, "Is it pizza?" Even though we hadn't ordered any, I pushed my chair back and stood up. I was closest to the hallway anyway, but something in Dad's voice made me stop. "Don't," he said quietly. His voice cracked. Then the knock came. Not a doorbell this time, just a single soft knock. I don't know why, but I opened the door. She stood there in the porch light. Our mom, she wore the same blue cardigan she'd been wearing the day she disappeared 6 years ago, same faded jeans, same little silver chain with the charm shaped like a leaf. Her hair was neat, her skin smooth. She hadn't aged a day. It was like someone had pressed pause on her. "Hi, sweetie," she said with a gentle smile. Like she'd just come back from the store. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Behind me, I heard Jamie gasp. Then Dad pushed past us. For a moment, I thought he was going to slam the door shut, but instead he reached out and touched her face. His hand trembled. "Claire," he whispered. "Is it really you?" She blinked. "I think so," she said. "I think I'm me." We let her in. What else could we do? She looked so real, so normal, so her. But it didn't take long for things to start shifting. She didn't remember the accident, didn't remember the police, didn't remember where she'd been. "I just walked home," she said simply, as if that explained 6 years of silence. I took the long way. That night, she kissed Jamie on the forehead, told me how tall I'd gotten, and curled up on the couch like nothing had changed. Dad cried. Jamie smiled in his sleep, but I didn't sleep. Because at exactly 3:13 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. I peeked through my half-open door. There she stood, barefoot, still in her cardigan, facing the hallway wall, completely still, not moving, not speaking, just staring. The morning sun did little to warm the house. The air was thick with silence and unanswered questions. At breakfast, Mom sat quietly, her eyes distant. She chewed mechanically, barely touching her food. Dad tried to start a conversation, but she just nodded or smiled faintly. Like a ghost trapped in someone else's memories, I watched her closely, searching for any sign that she was the same woman who had disappeared all those years ago. But there was something different. Something empty. Jamie, oblivious to the tension, kept asking when they could play outside. Mom smiled at him then, but the smile didn't reach her eyes later. Dad took her aside and asked about the night she returned. "Do you remember anything?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "No, just a feeling, like waking up from a long dream. I remember the sky was dark, and then suddenly, I was here." The house felt colder. That night, the strange ritual repeated at 3:13 a.m. sharp. Mom would rise silently, barefoot, and walk to the hallway. There she stood motionless, staring at the cracked wallpaper on the far wall. Sometimes I imagined what she saw. Was it a shadow, a memory, or something else entirely? One night, curiosity got the better of me. I slipped out of bed and crept to the hallway, keeping a safe distance. Her breath was steady, almost hypnotic. Then, I saw her hand twitch, a small shiver running through her fingers. Suddenly, she turned her head slightly, as if sensing something I couldn't see. My heart pounded, but I didn't move. The clock on the wall ticked to 3:14 a.m. She walked back to her room, eyes still distant. I whispered, "Mom." No answer. The days passed like this, each one heavier than the last. Whispers in the walls, footsteps in empty rooms, shadows that lingered a moment too long, and me holding on to the hope that the woman who came back was still my mom, even if she didn't know it herself. Days slipped by, yet the house grew colder in ways no heater could fix. Mom was here, but she felt like a stranger wrapped in familiar skin. Her steps were light but hollow, her voice soft but distant. Sometimes she would catch Jamie's laughter and respond with a smile, but it never quite reached her eyes. It was like watching a shadow trying to imitate light. Dad did his best to fill the silence. He brought out old photo albums, played her favorite songs from years ago, and told stories about her childhood. Sometimes he even tried to joke like he used to before she disappeared, but none of it reached her. It was like she was trapped behind an invisible wall, locked inside a silence none of us could breach. I spent hours watching her, watching how she moved through the rooms, mechanical, distant, as if part of her mind wandered somewhere else. Her hands trembled when she tried to hold a cup of tea. She stared blankly at the TV, mute and unseeing. One afternoon, I found her sitting in the garden. The sun was warm, but she sat still, staring at the dirt as if it held the secrets of another world. "Mom," I whispered. She looked up, eyes glossy. "I don't know where I am," she said quietly. "Everything feels wrong." That night, the house felt alive with a strange energy. At 3:13 a.m., the ritual began again. Mom rose without a sound, barefoot and pale. She walked slowly to the hallway, stopping before the cracked wallpaper she stared at every night. I hid in the shadows, heart hammering. Her breath was shallow, her fingers twitched as if chasing a ghost only she could see. Suddenly she whispered, "It's not real. None of this is real." The words echoed in my mind long after she returned to bed. Days later, I noticed more strange things. Her phone lay untouched, with no messages or calls. She didn't ask about the house, our friends, or even Jamie. The family albums remained closed, gathering dust on the shelf. It was like she was trying to forget, or perhaps she was trying to resist something or someone that lurked beneath her surface. One evening, I found her standing by the window, looking out into the dark street. "Mom, what are you thinking about?" I asked gently. She blinked slowly, her voice barely audible. "I'm not sure this is where I belong. It feels like a dream, but a bad one." The house creaked and sighed like a living thing. Footsteps echoed softly in empty corridors. Whispers floated through the walls, faint and haunting. The wallpaper Mom stared at seemed to ripple occasionally, like the surface of a disturbed pond. Dad told me to be patient. She's been through so much. Give her time, but I was afraid, because the woman who left 6 years ago was gone, and the one who returned, she wasn't the same. And maybe, just maybe, something else came back with her. The nights grew darker and longer. I started fearing the silence more than any noise. Mom's behavior became more puzzling. During the day, she wandered the house like a ghost lost in time. But at night, things changed. At exactly 3:13 a.m., she would stand before the cracked wall, her eyes fixed, unblinking. Sometimes I thought I saw her lips, moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. One night, curiosity finally won over fear. I tiptoed down the stairs, careful not to make a sound. The house was bathed in pale moonlight, filtering through the windows. The clock ticked loudly. 3:12. 3:13. Mom appeared at the hallway entrance, her face pale and expressionless. She stepped forward slowly, hands trembling. The wallpaper before her seemed to shimmer as if alive. Her fingers reached out, barely touching the surface. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the hallway, carrying faint voices, soft, distant, like a forgotten song. Mom's body stiffened. She gasped and turned towards me, her eyes wide and filled with something that wasn't quite human. "I see them," she whispered, voice shaking. "The ones behind the wall. They're waiting." I froze. What was she talking about? After that night, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Doors creaked open on their own. Shadows moved just beyond the edge of vision. The whispers grew louder, turning into fragmented words, like a secret language meant to be heard only by her. Dad dismissed it as stress. "You're imagining things," he said. But I knew better. I could feel it too, something unseen lurking in the corners, watching, waiting. Mom's single quotes as condition worsened. Her eyes often glazed over, and sometimes she spoke in riddles. One evening, she muttered, "They want to take me back to where I came from." I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was she losing her mind, or was there something supernatural at work? One thing was clear. The woman who returned was fighting a battle none of us could see, and the more I tried to help her, the deeper into darkness we seemed to fall. The house no longer felt like a home. It was a prison. Mom's moments of clarity became fewer, swallowed by longer stretches of silence and distant stares. Sometimes she would sit for hours, her eyes fixed on a spot no one else could see. Other times, she whispered names none of us recognized. One night, I found her in the basement, standing motionless under the flickering light bulb. "They're here," she said, voice barely above a breath. "They're closer now." Fear gripped me, but I didn't leave her side. Instead, I reached out, holding her trembling hand. The coldness shocked me, as if her warmth was slipping away with each passing day. The next morning, strange marks appeared on the wallpaper. Dark, curling shapes like ancient runes, almost glowing faintly in the morning light. Dad claimed it was mold or a trick of the light, but I knew better. The house was alive with something old, something hungry. Mom's nights were the worst. At 3:13 a.m. sharp, she'd rise, eyes glassy, and begin her ritual at the wall. The whispers now came to me too faint. At first, like wind through trees, then sharper, more urgent. I felt their cold breath on my neck, the weight of unseen eyes watching. One night, determined to protect her, I followed her closely as she moved. The wallpaper rippled like water, and through the thin veil, I saw something. shadows twisting, and reaching out, my heart pounded. Was it real? Or a nightmare bleeding into waking hours? Mom didn't notice me, lost in the trance. Then she turned suddenly, voice echoing, "You can't save me. They own me now." Panic surged. I wanted to scream, to fight back this invisible force, but all I could do was hold her close, whispering, "We'll find a way. I won't let them take you." Days blurred into nights. The boundary between our world and whatever haunted Mom weakened. I was losing her piece by piece, and with her, the warmth that once filled our home. Yet, deep inside, a spark of hope remained. I promised myself I'd uncover the truth. No matter what waited in the shadows, I'd bring her back. Or lose everything trying. The days became a blur, but one thing remained clear. The deeper Mom sank, the more the house whispered. I started searching for answers everywhere. Old books in the attic, dusty journals, even the internet. Marks on the wallpaper or Mom's nightly rituals. One afternoon, while rummaging through the attic boxes, I found a small, worn, leather-bound notebook. It wasn't mine or Dad's. The handwriting inside was delicate but hurried, filled with strange symbols and cryptic notes. Flipping through, I realized it was Mom's from years before she disappeared. The entries told a story of something she feared, something dark lurking in our family's past. There were mentions of the Watchers, shadowy figures that lived between worlds, feeding on fear and silence. They said these entities could take over a person's mind, trapping their soul in a limbo of forgotten memories. I felt a chill run down my spine. That night, as usual, Mom rose at 3:13 a.m. and stood before the wall. I took the notebook and quietly approached her. "Mom," I whispered, showing her the book. For a moment, her eyes flickered with recognition. "They're real," she said softly, "and they want to keep me." I held her hand tighter. "We'll fight them together." But the shadows weren't done with us yet. That very night, a violent storm hit our town. The house was swallowed by darkness. Save for the faint glow from the notebook's pages, in the silence, I heard a low growl coming from the basement. Mom's grip tightened around my wrist. "They're here," she whispered. "We don't have much time." Fear clawed at my throat, but I followed her, descending into the basement. The air grew colder with every step. The shadows moved, swirling and shifting as if alive. And then, in the darkest corner, I saw them. Faint figures, barely visible, but undeniably real. Their eyes glowed faintly, watching us. Mom stepped forward, voice trembling but resolute. "You won't take me." The shadows paused. The air thickened. I held my breath, waiting for the next move. The shadows lingered, hovering like a dark storm ready to consume everything. Mom stood firm, though her eyes betrayed exhaustion and fear. I gripped the notebook tightly, searching for something, anything that could help. Suddenly, one of the shadowy figures stepped forward. Its voice was a whisper, yet it filled the room. "You cannot escape. We are bound to you, to her." Mom's hand trembled as she held mine. "But you forget. Love is stronger than fear." From the notebook, I read aloud an incantation written in her ancient handwriting. A plea for light to break through the darkness. The room pulsed with energy, shadows flickering, then recoiling. The darkness fought back, tendrils stretching toward us. But the words carried a power I didn't understand. Hope. Mom's eyes cleared for a moment, a flicker of the woman she used to be. "Remember who you are," I urged her. A sudden flash of light filled the basement. The shadows screamed, not loud, but a sound that echoed inside our souls. When the light faded, the shadows were gone. Mom collapsed, exhausted but free. Days passed. The house felt lighter, warmer. Mom's memory slowly returned, though some parts remained blurred, as if sealed away for protection. She smiled for the first time. "In years, I'm home," she said softly. And for the first time since she returned, I believed it was true.